Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is exactly 9:30 a.m. right here on News and Views on Salam Media. A very big warm welcome to the Polokwane listeners, One Station FM. Thank you for joining us. Do hope that you're going to enjoy the rest of the programming right here on Salam Media. Next online, we're going to be talking with political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi, and he is going to talk to us about a very, very worrying trend that is playing out in South Africa. We saw or we see this happening all of the time in the US, but goodness me, what's happening in South Africa? That we seeing all of this random, or it might not well be random shootings of young people in taverns. So what on earth is going on, and what is behind the increase in mass shootings in South Africa? Very good morning to you, Professor. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning, Julie, and good morning to your wonderful viewers and listeners.
Thank you indeed. Are you worried about this? Well, I mean, these acts already over the past few weeks has been very, very disturbing to us as a South African public. Um, Obviously, the big question to ask is what on earth is going on, including the deaths of 21 people at that tavern, which up to now I might have missed it, but up to now we've not yet heard what was the cause of their deaths. It definitely weren't shootings. Um, we don't know if it was some sort of death by leaking gas or whatever it is. But these are questions that really should have us as South Africans very, very worried.
No, most definitely, if you look at what has been happening, we are a very violent country, but we are not accustomed to mass shootings. This is not what has been happening in South Africa. And by the way, any killing, no matter whether it's one person who got murdered, it's unacceptable. But I strongly believe what is happening, it's just indicative of how chaotic lawlessness in this country has become a huge problem, and unfortunately, criminal elements are taking advantage. If the chance of not being, found. Is so high, like a country in South Africa, then we will forever have situations like this where criminal elements is in possession of guns, and whatever the motive may be, this is just not a good for our country, which with a bleeding economy.
Okay, we are hearing voices from certain quarters suggesting that we need to be looking at the country's gun laws. But then you ask yourself, where would township youth, who probably are mostly unemployed, get the money to buy guns, to buy arms? That's the one question. And is this truly about mass shootings? What is the motive? What is the agenda? And then we're
Yeah,
having,
well,
all right, carry on, respond to that, and I'll hand it
yes, no,
to
sorry.
you.
I think it's going to be very difficult to say who are the culprits. Is it now the youth? I would rather generalize that. My belief is that any gun laws will never completely, prevent violent conflict. It has never happened, but we do have examples of countries like Australia and particularly Japan, where we have seen, or China, we have seen a significant decrease in violent crimes or contact crimes involving firearms. For me, it's because the guns are illegal. You've got so many illegal immigrants, so it's actually much easier to get a gun. And sometimes, remember, there are people who can manufacture some of these guns. You get toy guns, which are now turned into little weapons. So all these things plays a role. There's a high circulation of illegal weapons which can be bought quite easily, and criminal elements will make these guns available to promote this chaos in our society. So that is one thing. But another question is also, where does our youth get money to buy alcohol? Why are our youth spending so much time in drinking holes, or these places
Yeah.
where I think it's just also part of our society and our upbringing. I strongly believe that perhaps one way to resolve this is to go back to basics, and back to basics for me means where families are taking responsibility to inculcate a culture of responsibility. I mean, there's complete chaos in our country. Look at how violent our kids are at school, and where is the parents? Where are the adults? Where are the family strong values that we used to have? So for me, this is also indicative. Yes, the failure of our politicians, but South Africans has a responsibility to also intervene here.
Okay, I'm going to take a very short break and ask you to keep your phone. Oh, all right. If you can just keep your phone in that, where it is right now and as still as possible, because I'm losing your face as we speak. It's all over the place. So just keep your phone exactly where it is now. And two very important questions. Um, we understand we're hearing noises from different quarters suggesting there might be a third force at play here, trying to create divisions between different race groups and religious groupings. What is your take on that situation? Because let
Well,
me
it
just add, Professor, let me add to that, because the moment we heard about the first set of shootings, the tavern shootings, the Qatari government released a statement suggesting that there's terrorism activities in our country. And I guess this is where that third force um, thinking is coming from, that there's a third force at play here.
Yeah, well, once again, it's very difficult. When these things happen, remember the role that the media is also playing in situations like this, where you will get copycats, people who want to emulate what is happening in other areas. It is for the police to decide whether this is a coordinated activities going around. But the problem with our police and our intelligence units is that they are sleeping. They're sleeping on the jobs.
Absolutely.
There's nothing. We are very reactive. But for me, when things happen like this, where people can just randomly, and I mean the way how brazen they are to come and shoot people, I would just say perhaps at this stage, it's very difficult to talk about a third force, because this simply means then these shootings are coordinated. But one can also not dispel. Remember what happened last year, July. It's also July again. So there might just be elements who wants to disturb and create chaos. But it's very difficult at this stage, as a lay person, sociologists, to pinpoint and say perhaps there are dead force elements at hands. And I think that perhaps the police and security forces can answer, but one can never rule out such possibilities, especially if you look at how these shootings happens, because it just doesn't make sense that one shooting will be in another province and then the next week or a couple of days in another province. So even if I hear people wants to copy or these just criminal elements, we've never had situations like this in the past in South Africa.
And sadly, you spoke about the ineffective SAPs and intelligence services. You have indicated they're very reactive. So there's not really much hope for them or for us as citizenry to get any reassurance from them and to suggest that they're working hard in getting at the bottom of this. Um, I guess it's going to be left up to us as civil society to start questioning and doing our own investigation. It's just mind-boggling. You also mentioned earlier on in the interview that we are a very violent country. What, as a sociologist, what do we attribute this to? Do we put this blame directly at the door of the apartheid, the now defunct apartheid regime? Is it the way they ruled our country for that many years? Is it because of our helplessness and hopelessness that this is the only way we know how to react rather than to respond to the issues that we are met with as people of South Africa?
Well, it's a combination of factors. Yes, I'm also one of those who strongly believe that you cannot root out what happened in the past within a couple of years, but we need to move on from that narrative. I think for me, where the problem lies was that yes, apartheid has to be blamed, a very violent dispensation, but I think our priorities it's also not in the right places. What happens that our leaders focus too much and is still focusing too much on enriching themselves at looking at their own interests, and the whole issue of crime, the economy seems to have been relegated, to the back, and that's why we are facing this. I mean, I don't understand. You've got such bloated structures, security clusters, and all that that we as a country can't pick up. My question is, we do have a defense force. I mean, if you go and search roadblocks, you don't see that. I mean, I'm staying in Bloemfontein. I have never seen a traffic cop around for the past 6 months. And those were things that were even happening during apartheid, because South Africans have become so accustomed to that kind of things. I know it's very difficult to completely deal with crime in that way, but we need to try and prioritize that. As I've indicated, it starts within our families. If a kid, you should just see how our youth are rolling around during the day. I mean, they all over the place, young people, 11, 12 years, 13, 15 years. I mean, if such an individual, a kid, a teenager is not at home around about 10 o'clock in the evening, it is a huge problem. But for me, fact of the matter is, it seems as if our priorities is somewhere else. If there's no tender involved, that particular issue will not get any priority, and that's where the problem is with South Africa, and also the issue of crime.
Okay, so no answers as yet regarding mass shootings, the violent nature of us as South Africans, how we move forward. We have a very inefficient South African police service. So we're going to have to, as civil society, put our heads together and see how we move forward. Thank you for talking with us this morning. I hope and pray we don't have to talk about this again in the future. I hope that these are just random acts that are going to be rooted out eventually, sooner rather than later, and that we don't see more such acts happening. Very quick and short answer to that.
Yes, no, most definitely. We will forever talk about structural problems in our country, but let us not hope we have to talk about counting the bodies of individual people in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Matebesi, talking to us about what is behind the increase in mass shootings in South Africa. Like every other South African, I think he too is quite confounded by this phenomena. We'll still, in the coming weeks, talk to other experts and specialists and see if they have a different take on this matter. In a minute or two, we're going to be taking another tribute video regarding the passing of our dear brother Don Matera. But first, an ad break. The time is exactly 9:45. This is Salam Media.
Tell going to speak. Okay. Uncle Don Matera, Martin. I knew him for a very long time. First as a teacher of poetry, way before we became Muslims, and later on as a as a Muslim who spent a bit of time part of Muslim youth movement. He used to come to our conferences and we got to know each other very well. And we used to give each other lifts because he lived in Eldorado Park and I lived in Pimville. So whenever we had meetings far away, he'll either give me a lift or I'll give him a lift to drop him, and he'll drop me. So I knew him very well, and it's a very sad day, but inshallah he's in a better place, and we want to go to Jannah, we have to die. Shukran.